Food bank usage has absolutely exploded in 2023. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you are literally seeing the standard of living absolutely tank and collapse. Little do people realize. And on average, Albertans believe it will take them 3 months to pay back their holiday bills, while a quarter aren't confident they'll even be able to pay off those bills in time. Food bank usage has exploded in 2023. During this holiday season, we've seen people ramping up the credit cards even more. We've also seen immigration explode in 2023. We see Canadians that can't afford to cover basic costs like food and energy. And we also see more and more people who are homeless on the streets and are going into shelters. So let's get right into what is going on, because really the economy's in a dire state right now, and people just do not really recognize this, and we'll get into the Google Trends data shortly. So 40% of single parent homes can't afford basic needs, says Salvation Army. So 1 in 4 Canadians is struggling to afford the rising cost of covering basic needs, new data released by the Salvation Army shows, but that figure climbs even higher for single parents. In a report released on Monday, the Salvation Army outlined how food affordability and housing security remain top issues for Canadians struggling amidst inflation, based on more than 1,500 Canadians surveyed. And we're going to get into inflation and how your wages have just been absolutely obliterated by it over the past couple of years later in this video. But if you think about that, people can't afford food. That is a third world problem. But what do you really expect when Canada imports this much of the third world into its country? You're of course going to have third world problems. You're of course going to have food inflation, because we don't produce a lot of the food. It's too cold, the climate. And another factor in that is that productivity is declining, because guess what? We're having the same problems that the USSR had. Essentially, there is no incentive anymore for people to work when they can't afford anything and they're in this crisis. And I don't think the government has honestly realized it, which is pretty hilarious. But anyway, it's also not hilarious. So all food banks are noticing it. Helping Hands see sharp increase in clients this year, and it's more than double for this guy. And this is just in a small town, guys, in Manitoba. This is not in the big city. This is in a small town in Manitoba. So it just goes to show how everybody is being impacted by inflation and this massive cost of living crisis that is upon us. And really, it just baffles my mind thinking about 2024, because I'm like, let's just say that all the realtors and the mortgage brokers are right and housing prices start marching higher, and then you also have inflation that's still marching onwards as well. What is that going to mean for everybody this time next year? We're going to be in like just an unthinkable state of affairs in this country. So anyway, let's continue on and talk about it. So in numbers, I mean, we stayed at pretty much within 150 to 200 in the beginning of the year, and now it has grown pretty much steady, and we're at 425. So over double the amount of people. We have a lot of people from war-torn areas that have come over, and we gladly help them, but that has helped increase the numbers right across Manitoba. All food banks are noticing it. And it's not just Manitoba. It's happening in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto. It doesn't matter where you go. Food bank usage has absolutely exploded in 2023. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you are literally seeing the standard of living absolutely tank and collapse. Little do people realize and understand. But eventually, their budget will be affected so much that guess what? It hits them and they say, holy shit, like we're going to be in the same state. We're not going to be able to afford food or this and that. It's just horrific what's really happening. And also the government's motives with their immigration program, quite frankly, insane. So the vast majority of Albertans concerned about paying off holiday expenses while retailers extend Boxing Day sales. So you know what would have actually been a good thing, guys? It would have been a good thing if people had actually cut back. But the problem is, even when people cut back and save money because rough times are ahead, that affects jobs, obviously, because then those retailers don't earn a lot of money, and it just turns into this doom loop, which I believe we're already in. Because even when people are out there spending the money, as we'll get into, guess what they're putting it on? They're putting it on the credit card. I think there's retailers that are discounting to attract the consumers, given budget conscious consumers. Why are they budget conscious? Because the economy isn't in a good place. You only have to go and look at consumer credit and realize that that is still shooting higher. So you've got credit card debt that is going up. You've got consumer confidence that's absolutely tanking. So consumers are incredibly pessimistic right now. So it's no wonder that they are trying to discount stuff and trying to make it look and have the effect that they're actually getting a bargain when they're not. Despite those challenges, Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales met yearly averages, which some said was a result of shoppers attempting to spread Christmas time expenses over several weeks and paychecks to soften the blow. Pretty anecdotal. Those November sales have also generally increased in popularity since 2010. And really, you think about that, but that's just what's happened with the economy, government spending, all of the rest of it, the fake economy that we've seen since 2010. And then also, it just puts right after this, the average credit card balance in Canada surpasses $4,000. You've got to remember that a lot of people, they're not paying these credit cards down, guys. These credit cards, they're just literally rolling over the balances. They might have 3 or 4 credit cards, and if the average amount is $4,000, they're paying a lot of money just to service this debt because they can't afford it. So what happens when the economy goes bad? That's the question that you have to ask, and I think we know the economy is already bad. You only have to look at some of the data. It's right there staring you in the face. But if you look at Google Trends, guys, what's happening with recession searches, it's actually at a low point. So that actually tells you that, hey, guess what? The consumer is actually thinking maybe there's going to be a soft landing, and I know there's a lot of hope around interest rate cuts. I just want you to visualize what has happened to the economy and what it's took to get inflation down. And we haven't even got deflation. We've got disinflation right now, which is just prices are rising. They're just not rising at the pace they were before. So prices are still going up. There's still inflation, but it's just not as bad as it was before. So we're still being impacted by it. And it's took the Bank of Canada getting interest rates to 5%, absolutely crushing the economy. That's what everybody will see later on. Most of us have already come to that realization throughout 2023, how bad the economy is. The data, I mean, if the government hadn't spent a little more over the past quarter, we would be in a technical recession right now. But quite frankly, I don't care about or give a shit about any of the manipulated data from the government, because you look at the data from S&P Global, you look at the PMIs, they're awful. They are dreadful. And Canada is on a divergence from the United States, which has been more resilient in terms of economic strength than Canada. So just think what happens when the United States goes down as well, which it will, and that will just impact Canada even worse. It will drag Canada down even more, because when the US enters a recession, so does Canada normally, 9 out of 10 times. Well, guess what? If Canada's already in a recession and then the US enters recession, it's going to be pretty fucking bad. And I think we all know that and are prepared for that on this channel. And having a plan is totally free. And that's what people aren't doing. They aren't having a plan. They aren't clued up, because if you look at this, we're at lows. The summer of 2022 was really when consumers were out there searching and worried about a potential recession. That was back in 2022. So it's kind of crazy. The average credit card balance in Canada is more than $4,000, according to an early December report from TransUnion, a credit reporting agency. And on average, Albertans believe it will take them 3 months to pay back their holiday bills, while a quarter aren't confident they'll even be able to pay off those bills in time. And doesn't that make sense when you really think about it, guys? Because with what's happening with credit card defaults, auto loan defaults spiking right now, that all makes sense that people are saying, yeah, I don't even think I'll be able to pay it off. So it's going to be very, very difficult, because there is so much debt in the system in Canada. We need a debt deleveraging, and a debt deleveraging will be immensely painful for all those with debt, because quite frankly, those are the people that are most affected in a debt deleveraging cycle, which I believe we are on the front end of being in right now. But the thing is, what the government does, what happens in 2024 is anybody's guess. We've got an election in the United States, and then we've also got a potential election happening in Canada in 2024, or it might be in 2025. But that means a lot of manipulation is going to be around in the markets and in the data, and we've already seen that over 2023, as I think you all know. And then basically we've had this happening. Violent crime rose again in 2022, murder rate highest in 30 years. And again, you're seeing this happen because if you import the third world, you get the third world problems, and those third world problems, they lead to more crime generally. Because guess what? When people can't afford food, they will go out, unfortunately, and do whatever it takes, be it rob somebody just to get that food, or drugs in the case of Canada, because we have a massive opioid problem in Canada. It's just kind of insane. And then the last thing I want to go over, and this is something that people really should try to understand this because it's vitally important in my opinion, is how wages have been utterly destroyed. And really, the amount they've been destroyed over the past couple of years is just unbelievable. You're talking like 25% of your purchasing power is gone. And literally, you've got the 1980s CPI on this chart, which I've put as peaked out at 16.2%. And then you've also got, this is average hourly earnings, which is a best case. And guess what? That is minus 12% for 2022, minus 6.3% for 2023. So it's really not a good thing where this has been. And if you look over the past couple of years and the past decades, you can see that it's never really been positive. It's only ever been positive after massive government intervention, like in 2008, 2009, and like in 2020. That was the record amount of purchasing power that we ever saw over the past 20 plus years since 1997 was 1.23%. 1.23% real. Can you just believe that? And it was probably actually negative because a lot of you will say, well, I think inflation was more than 16.2%. And I wouldn't even argue with that because I think that's true. I think inflation was a lot worse than 16.2%, but I'm just using the 1980 CPI, which is more accurate than the current CPI, but it's still not accurate. So it's just kind of crazy, guys, where we've been in 2023. I want to thank you so much for your support throughout 2023. I really appreciate it. Please leave me a comment below. If you're looking for a VPN, go to expressvpn.com/Market Mania to get their best deal and to get around Justin Trudeau's authoritarian censorship laws. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might also like this video here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.